is Hard Parking, brought to you by Right Honda and Right Toyota out of Scottsdale, Arizona. I'm your host, Jhae Pfenning. So what happened to the Infiniti on the last episode? Well, first off, if you haven't listened to the most recent episode, I urge you to listen to it because it was our third student loan forgiveness topic over the last 24 months. Brian Kalma rejoined the show, and of course, good friend of the show, Wes Tankersley, and just good friend in general. And we kind of talked about it. You know, Brian has paid all of his stuff off years ago. Myself and Wes owe a lot of money. So you want to go back and listen to that. It's a solid, heady conversation, no debating, no arguing, just a bunch of really well thought out opinions. And what does this whole $10,000 really mean? Like, is it a lot? Does it help people? Does it not help people? Are people getting checks? No, they're not actually going to get checks. But I encourage you to go back and check it out. Also, I had mentioned that my Infiniti died. I had a hell of a weekend. My hip no longer hurts from, me falling into my own swimming pool. I wish I had that on video. Said that last time. I don't. Would be nice. So I took the car to the dealership. I'm glad I took it to the dealership because, my son was kind of like, I have a mechanic, a mobile mechanic that can look at your car. You could have saved a lot of money by taking it to the dealership. Well, I have towing. It's covered by my insurance. But, I had to make the decision. Am I going to take it home and try to figure it out myself or, to my son's mechanic contact? Or do I just want to take it to the dealership? It's hot. I don't want to screw with it. So it sat at the dealership for a couple of days. My service manager called me back and said, hey, man, we're going to need this for a little bit longer. We're not quite sure what's going on with it. Your diagnostic fee is going to be a little bit more because it is a little complicated. Ended up being a starter relay. But there's one that's right on the battery cable. Wasn't that one. It was some like underside one that you really couldn't see. I wouldn't have ever figured out. And I doubt that, my son's miscellaneous mechanic would have probably figured it out, especially if the dealership that specializes in those vehicles took like a day. But I did get the cost and it was a little expensive. And I said, shouldn't you guys have checked that like one of the first things? You go, yeah, typically. And we did check the one on top, which is the same one I checked, but it took a little extra effort, which is fine. So I'm back at home. I have my daily driver back. Didn't want to have to take the NSX everywhere with me. Thank you for all your concern. Those of you who DM'd me on social media to try to, throw some guesses at it. Thank God it wasn't the key fob. That would have been embarrassing. But again, I didn't pay anything. It's just taking the time to go get it, which would have kind of sucked. After this word from 409, we're going to be joined by comedian and fellow car guy, David Hahn. Been following him for a while, follows me for a while, and he wanted to come on. And I think it's a good idea. So coming up, David Hahn. Jhae Pfenning here, and I want to tell you guys about 4 Wheel Online. For over a decade, 4 Wheel Online has been bringing the best truck accessories and truck parts to enhance the appearance and performance of all trucks and SUVs. They are dedicated to providing an extensive range of upgrades that will match any maker model on the road. The truck products cover everything you need to give your truck a custom look and added functionality. And if you need a tire and wheel package, head over and use the configuration tool. They carry all the major brands of wheels and tires, so go get outfitted today. So visit them online at 4Wheel Online or call them at 813-769-2451. Again, that's 4Wheel Online, the number 4 Wheel Online. Joined by comedian David Hahn, and we're going to bullshit about some cars and teach people who you are and what you do, because I'm interested as well.
Yeah, so I had a job this morning. By day, I am a home inspector, and that's how I pay the bills. It's a good job. It allows me to work part-time and make more money than my wife.
Attaboy.
So
breadwinner.
That upsets her. Because she tells me that I always find a way to make the most amount of money for the least amount of effort. And then my response is, well, I'm lazy, not stupid.
Right. You got to work smarter, not harder, right?
Exactly. So that allows me to do stand-up at night. I drive into LA. I live out in Redondo Beach. So we're talking anywhere between a 30 and 45-minute commute, depending on where it's located, what time of day that I have to drive out. I've been doing stand-up really for about going on 4 years. I started out in LA which is, I guess it's, from what I understand, it's the harder thing to do. So generally comedians, as they start out, they will start out wherever they are, wherever they live, Boston or Kansas City or Miami or wherever. They get a few years under their belt, and then they make the jump to Los Angeles, where their dreams can die a slow, painful death.
Right.
So I decided that I wanted to make it even more difficult, and to stay, I'll just start it out here, which it does have. I think it has its advantages to some degree, but I can see why people would think that it's more difficult to start out here.
Did you, so isn't, I want to say, is it the Laugh Factory? Is like the super famous one. There's one super famous one out there that pretty much anyone who's anyone is either worked there or done comedy there. I want to say is Pauly Shore's family.
So that's the Comedy Store.
Oh, it's the Laugh Factory comedy. Maybe the Comedy Store gets their supplies from the Laugh Factory.
Well, so yeah, Mitzi Shore. So Pauly Shore's mom, Mitzi Shore, opened the Comedy Store a few decades ago, and so that's the world famous one.
I just made a supply chain joke, and it probably fell pretty flat.
Well, I didn't get it, so but yeah, the other one's the Laugh Factory, also well known.
So it is
Hollywood
a place.
Yeah, the Laugh Factory is a place. They have several locations, like every comedy club, I think.
Okay. Right.
So there's the Laugh Factory, and then there's the Hollywood Improv on Melrose. So I did my first set at the Hollywood Improv last week, I believe. It was Wednesday. It was really an open mic. And so how that works is at 6:00 every day, I believe, or maybe it's on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, they have an open mic, and it's called a bucket mic. So you write your name on a piece of paper, and they throw in a bucket, and they randomly draw names out of the bucket. Now, open mics generally are really difficult, but they're necessary. And so they're necessary because if you're starting out, you need a place to practice your material. Now, they're difficult because you're in a room full of comedians who have no interest in listening to what you have to say. So they're probably on their phones. They're courteous enough to the comics in LA are courteous enough to not chatter during your set. If you do, then the comic will call you out on stage. So yeah, and so this room was packed. I want to say there's probably 30 or 40 comics in there, just hanging out, all waiting to go up. And the mic only lasts 2 hours, so you can be there 2 hours and not go up. And so that'll happen to people for weeks on end. I know the guy who hosts it, and he tries to, if he sees people show up week after week, he'll try to get them up at some point. He'll make that exception. He'll just call them up because he sees them there. But I was fortunate enough to get called up. And so I did my 3-minute set, and the woman who books the talent there, I believe, I don't even know her name, she sits in the back and she just watches your set. And from what I understand, comics have to show up every week, have to show their faces, have to be consistently funny. And then she might call on you to do things like host a show or do a cold open or something along those lines. So yeah, that's how it is at her. The Comedy Store has its own mic. I think it's called Potluck, where you send an email to the Comedy Store, and they just pick you randomly, and you're on a list now to do the open mic at the Comedy Store. I don't know how I think the Laugh Factory also has a mic, but I don't really know how that works. But yeah, I mean, other than that, man, it's just going to dive bars or holes in the wall. One thing that I've noticed is comedians will open up their own little comedy club, so they'll run their own open mic. So yeah, and now what's happening is you're starting to see comedians start to create their own spaces so they can do their work. That's what a buddy of mine did. Me and a buddy did. We started producing a comedy show. And, we're like, okay, well, we don't want to wait around for people to book us on their shows. We're going to make our own show. And so we put ourselves on our own show, and that's generally how it goes. We do 10 to 12 minutes our own shows. We'll book 3 or 4 comics to do 10 to 12 minutes, and then we'll book a headliner to do 25. And we just had our first show on, I want to say it was August 20th, and it was great. We sold out, and that was a good start to something that we hope will be a long running thing. And we're doing it once a month now. We're hoping to do it every 2 weeks, but we'll see how that goes.
You ever froze up on the mic? You had to have at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes I still do, because I'm almost 44, and my brain doesn't work as well as it did when I was 24. That's just how it is.
Right.
I've just accumulated so much crap in my brain that trying to remember something new it's tangibly more difficult. Like, I remember shit that I was taught in 8th grade, but I can't remember the new joke I wrote 2 days ago. Right. Sometimes. And so, a lot of times I'll go up there and I'll deliver especially if I'm working new material. If it's material I've already worked on, it's not really that much of a problem. I might miss part of the joke here and there if I haven't practiced enough. But if it's new material, I have my notes up there. Sometimes you have comics just reading straight from their notepad at an open mic. Yeah, this is something that people don't know about comedians and comedy, is that the process is, you're doing small. So if you're a touring comedian, the process is you do a lot of smaller shows to work out your material. A lot of times it's rough. That's why they don't want you to record. Yeah, so they don't want you to record stuff. I mean, there's stories of Chris Rock or Dave Chappelle. They're doing like an hour and 45 at some club, and there's a lot of dead air. They're just rambling. None of it makes sense. And what's happening is we're just saying things out loud, and that's part of the art, and it moves forward the thought process. So there were times where I would deliver a joke, and I just can't remember for the life of me what I'm supposed to say next or what I'm moving on to. And so I just look over to my phone and say, oh, okay. All right, so here we go. And then I move on to the next joke.
So I think you're one of the first people, and I've been on Twitter a long time, an embarrassingly long time to have no followers.
Might be a good thing.
Yeah, but you're one of the first people that I've noticed. Anytime you'll comment on something, and if someone comments on something, you'll comment back, and it's so you can kind of carry a mini joke conversation with somebody on Twitter. And typically, Twitter, you have to either be blue check mark verified, or you have to be a complete troll, just a bad troll to get any kind of attention. So it's one of the things I'm like, oh, okay, this guy. And then I connected the dots to Instagram one day. I go, oh, same guy.
Same guy. Yeah, well, I'm definitely not verified. It's not something that I ever think will happen. So I like to troll Twitter, mostly because it's the dumbest place on earth.
I fucking hate Twitter.
I hate it. And I only look at it maybe every, 3 or 4 days. A buddy of mine he'll direct message me some tweets here and there just to look at something absurd, but I hardly engage. And when I do, it's just a troll. I know I'm one of those guys, but I also like to tweet jokes onto Twitter, mostly as sort of a notepad.
Yeah, but you're not a mysterious egg on Twitter. You're a person.
I allegedly am a
troll.
person.
It's a troll with a face. Yeah. It's
well, I've been called a Russian bot.
Oh, yeah.
So, there's that. So that's the fallback now. If you say something that a person doesn't agree with, then you're a Russian bot. Which, all right, whatever. to me, it's like I said, it's all fun. I don't take any of it seriously. But it's.
So you're taking this call from your Ridgeline.
I am.
House was a little reverby. Yeah. So cars, man. What do you got? What do you want?
So I know you from the NSX forums and the owners group. I want to say I think I know you from the OG NSX Prime website.
Yeah, I'm Tej on there.
Yes, yeah. So you had a 97, correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and what year did you buy that?
12?
2012. Okay, so then we bought our cars at around the same time. So I bought mine in April of 2012.
Okay.
And so I think I remember you coming around about then, and your car was very distinct because of the wrap that you had on it.
Which is more recent. Definitely.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I remember you. I've known about you for quite some time, at least for most of my NSX ownership. So I do have a 2002 Acura NSX. I bought it in Tampa, Florida, and it is a rebuilt car. And so I bought it from, if there's any NSX people who are listening to this, they're going to get a kick out of this. So, I bought it from, a guy named Sean Geary. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
So he was really popular for a while.
Was.
I don't know what happened to him. He was like fixing everybody's cars and parts and doing shit like that, right? A guy named Sean. I remember that.
Yes. Yeah. So he was in Tampa. I bought it from him. So the story goes, there is a guy, but he lived in Chino Hills. And so one day he was on the highway, and I guess he hit a patch of water on the highway. And no, his name is Jason Novak.
That name sounds familiar too.
Jason Novak was the previous owner of my car. So he hit a patch of water on the highway down in like Orange County somewhere. And he spun, and the rear of the car hit the median, hit the concrete barrier, and the car got totaled out. So Sean at the time he had multiple NSXs in his driveway. So at the time he bought a 2004 Silver from Sacramento that had an engine fire. So he got that. He bought Jason Novak's old car. He flew out to Chino Hills, and he drove it back to Tampa from Southern California. And I remember this distinctly because he brought an extra set of taillights to like secure to the back of the car, because the back of the car was pretty badly damaged. And so he bought an extra set of taillights to secure to the back of the car and wire it up so we'd have some brake lights. He drove it all the way back, and he was going to part it out. And he ended up parting out part of that car. And there's a few people who know this story. So the front end of my car, of its original VIN, went to Regan U.
Okay.
So his conversion is from my car. And so I just messaged him one day. I was like, dude, so I'm looking to get one of these. I'm looking at the damage. It doesn't look like it's terrible. Would you be able to rebuild that for me? And I'll just buy it from you. And so I commissioned him to just rebuild that. And he replaced the trunk, basically. He cut the trunk. He had the trunk cut off, had a trunk from like an 03 welded on, and just put the panels back on. And so yeah, that's how I got that. So I bought it. I drove it back to Sacramento. I was living in Sacramento at the time. I've had this car for about 10 years, and I want to say about 54,000 miles.
That's not bad. Whatever happened to Sean?
So Sean,
he kind of disappeared and just became like, remember that guy Tomaski, which he was known.
Yes.
Yeah. So I actually bought parts from him underneath his other name, and then when I say, "Hey, weren't you Tomaski?" He goes, "Yes," and then he just disappeared. But I got what I wanted. I didn't realize how much of a dice roll it was at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. So Sean, I still talk to him on occasion.
Oh,
Yeah. So what happened to Sean was he got divorced, and I don't want to be putting his business.
uh,
I don't want to be putting his business out
that
there,
makes
but
a lot of sense.
he got divorced, and so that's what happened to Sean. And he's doing his thing now. He still works on people's cars. He still works on a few NSXs. Yeah, I mean, occasionally I'll text him, see how he's doing.
That's
You
good
know,
because that's back before. I mean, it's funny to say, but even 7 years ago, social media was nothing like it is now. And
no,
so it's
not
like,
even.
hey, what happened to Sean? And I'm reading all this stuff. I'm like, this guy used to be like everybody talked to him, talked about him, and he was everywhere. And all of a sudden, he wasn't. And so he started getting blamed for
Yeah,
being, oh, he's a scammer. And I'm like, what? There's got to be something else. And yeah, I mean, that life changing event, divorce, man, that's a big deal. So
yeah, and I always find that I find that oftentimes when there is a discrepancy or a gripe from a purchaser from a seller, it's generally miscommunication or you know something along those lines, short of being like Tomasky or
sure,
whoever.
sure.
But yeah, Sean, like say, he got divorced. I think it forced him to sell his NSX because he had a 91 or a 92, and he just I don't know, maybe he had to sell it. I think he had to sell it, and you know, I've sort of toyed with him and said, look, man, you know, if I ever come to sell my car, which it's just not going to happen, but I'll give him first right of refusal to buy it back.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly because it's in really good shape. It's in better condition now than it was when I bought it. And then, I just had the guys at HQ Engineering out in San Gabriel do a ton of work to it. So it's good to go for 10 years. I did the coolant hoses myself back in, I want to say 2020. That took 2 weeks. It was a pain in the butt. I understand why people would pay $1,500 to $2,000 to have someone else do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, I have that. I dailied that for 5 years. And then I finally just said, you know what, I want to get a daily. So right now, my daily is a 2021 Honda Ridgeline. This is probably the fourth daily driver I've had since 2017.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, because I just kind of went through them. I had a Honda Accord. My first daily was a Honda Accord V6 with a manual. It was a 2004. I really liked that car. One day that it just stopped working. And then after that, I got a 2008 BMW X3 3.0 SI. I had that for a year. I dumped 4,000 into it to keep it running, and then just got rid of it. After that, I had a 2012 Acura TSX Sport Wagon that I loved. 1 week after I purchased it, the transmission disintegrated.
Sweet. That's a good
Yes,
investment.
right. So I I was scrambling to find a transmission, and I looked on eBay. I saw a TSX transmission for, I want to say, $300, and then I paid another 700 to get that in. So a week after I bought that thing, I had to drop $1,000 into it for a new tranny, and I got a 2017 Honda Ridgeline in, I want to say, April or February of 2020.
And then you got
Yes.
this
No,
one.
2021. So yeah, I got it in April of 2021. And it was just it was a nice truck. It was I want to say an RTL front wheel drive. It was everything that I needed. And then that was right before the car values shot up. Maybe 6 or 8 months later, I was just looking online. It's like, well, let me see how much a Honda dealer will give me for this. So they gave me more than I paid for it on a trade-in. So I just upgraded to a 2021. So I'm driving this Ridgeline. A lot of people don't want to consider it a real truck, which is fine by me. I like to think of it as an SUV with a birth defect,
Mm.
but it's very comfortable. I drove this thing to and from Colorado 3 times at the end of last year, and I couldn't be happier with how this thing drives.
It's quite
And
capable. probably not going to, take it on a bunch of construction sites and complete a bunch of projects, but for your everyday commuter, small project DIYer, it's more than capable. In fact, most of these trucks that people get are just more like, peacocking overkill.
Yes. Like it's the same. And this is part of why I think maybe you and I hate the internet, is that anytime these the automotive press, be it Car and Driver or Road and Track or whoever it is, comes out with a piece on some car, you always got someone chiming in.
Oh, yes.
Like, well, it's not a real truck. It's not. It's an SUV. It's a crossover. I'm like, dude,
that's a bitch car.
That's a bitch car. That's a new Subaru. I'm like, dude, you drive a lifted pickup and you go get groceries.
Right.
Except when I go get groceries, I'm riding in comfort. So, I don't understand. And honestly, like this thing has I think it has a payload capacity of about 1,500 pounds in the back, which in its class is very competitive. I think there might only be one mid-sized truck that exceeds that number. It tows 5,000 pounds, which
it's not bad.
Again, yeah, I don't know how many pickup trucks I see out here. Almost no one's towing something.
Right.
So I don't really care about towing. If I wanted to tow, I don't know if I would need to tow anything over 5,000 pounds. I may not be able to tow my NSX on a trailer. I don't know.
You could, for sure.
I could. Okay.
Yeah.
How much do those trailers weigh, you think?
I think 1,200 pounds, maybe.
Oh, that's not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah. My car's about 2,950 with half a tank of gas. So.
Right. And you could take it. I mean, even I could probably, well, not the Type S, but even, the old one, I could probably tow it with my Infiniti. But it's weird because when I'm trying to find a new vehicle, I always look at the towing capacity, but I've never towed a thing in my life.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I probably never will. So it's one of those things where I'm like, like with the NC1 NSX, I look at the trunk, I'm like, I really like the car. Not enough to sell my car for one, before the Type S. I mean, it's got this weird hump in the back, and I just can't pack as much stuff in the back. And it's like I've packed the back of my NSX like twice in the almost 10 years that I owned it. Huh. Moving and coming back from NS Expo 2018 in San Francisco. That's it.
Yeah, I think I've only packed my trunk the one time when I drove back from Tampa to Sacramento.
Yeah, see?
That's the only time. So question for you. So you have that Type S, that's known. Now, would you not have an NC1 if they didn't come out with the Type S?
I don't know. I may. It's kind of one of those weird things where I may still have had my 97, or I may have sold it for something else. Because one of the thoughts was with this Type S, it's like, okay, I didn't know, regardless of what people think, I didn't know 100% that I was going to get one.
Right.
Once I got the allocation, I still didn't know 100% that I was going to get it because, as a contractor, I never know when I'm working. I never know what our financial situation is. When you get a car like that, people just automatically assume you're going to put $16,000 wheels on there and get another $8,000 wrap and do all. It's like, no, man, I'm not one of these Lamborghini guys,
Yeah.
And so I didn't even know up until I finally signed the loan paperwork that it was mine. But the thought was, if I couldn't get it, would I have got an NC1? Going into it, the answer would have been yes. But having gone through it, I don't know, because it would have felt like a consolation prize in a super weird way, because the NC1s are super fucking special. Mm-hmm. But I may have, I wasn't trolling. Like, I was dead serious, and I would keep looking at these Aston Martins, 02 to 06 V12 Vanquishes, because that's like a dream car that I've always wanted. And the market right now is so low for those things. It's a $260,000 fucking car that you can get for like $50,000. Like, why not try to get one of those type of deal? Even if it's a piece of shit and it might break down every 5 minutes, it's not my daily.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I don't know. And it's another thing. It's like, I don't know if I would have, if my NSX would have been more pure, because, it was heavily modified and it was a lot of fun, but it was still heavily modified. Would I have been more inclined to have kept it, or would I have sold it sooner?
Yeah, that's So, did you purchase your NA2 with all that stuff on it? Like, was it heavily modified when you purchased it? Or was that something that you did?
No, it had the innate, it had the O2 to O5 conversion, back when it was super
Hmm.
popular that everyone was doing it.
Yeah.
TE37s, it had the hood, the NSXR hood, and it had
Hmm.
the NSXR, basically the NSX starter pack. It had the
Yeah.
downforce NSXR spoiler, and that was it. Tan interior and everything. So all the really big stuff I've done with it.
Huh. Yeah. I've driven a supercharged NSX, and I gotta say, it's intoxicating. Yours was a turbo, and what were you pushing, like 500 horsepower or something?
Uh, it, when I finally sold it to my friend Yoshi, I was doing 420 on 91 pump to the wheels, and then when I put E85 in it, I was doing closer to 460.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so
Wow.
crank anywhere from 470 to like 520,
Mm.
depending on what kind of gas I had in it. And I'm gonna tell you, I was always on the fence. I went up to Michigan. I drove a gentleman's turbo NSX. It was a Love Fab NSX, a guy named Charlie, who let everyone drive
Mhm.
it, and I was like, holy shit! One day, someday, and that was it. Like I've never even driven a supercharged NSX, but driving that turbo on a proper turbo, it's different.
Yeah, see, I technically can't get a turbo. There's no turbo kit that I can legally get in the state of California.
Correct.
So the only forced induction that I can legally have is a Comtech supercharger
Mm.
because it's the only one that's carb certified. And I did drive one with a Comtech supercharger, and I gotta say, I get it. I understand why people want more horsepower because I think the Comtech probably puts out like 360 to the wheel, and the whine of the
Which is plenty.
supercharger, it's plenty. Honestly, I think if my car had 350 at the crank, that would be plenty, in my opinion.
It
I
is.
mean,
Like I've never felt so slow until I moved here, and I go on these long supercar drives. So we have these long stretches of highway out here, and all the fast cars take off as soon as you start, and you don't see them again until
oh,
you get to the first checkpoint, which is usually a gas station. All the super
yeah.
slow cars are in the back, and you're stuck in the middle, sometimes even by yourself or with like the Altimas and shit. Because it's the modern Altimas, right? Because
Yeah.
our cars were great, but and they're quick and they're fun. They were borderline fast back then. They're not fast anymore. I had a
No, yeah.
Infiniti QX50. I think that's the 4-door. Or Q50,
Hmm.
Q50, yeah. And we were at Road America at NS Expo, and I was flying past Integra Type R's and naturally aspirated NSXs.
Oh yeah, you took your thing onto the track.
Yeah, and ruined two sets of brakes. But that's another story. What are your thoughts on? Because we've kind of talked about this offline. A new car comes out, like for case in point, the Civic Type R recently
Hmm.
announced. People lost their minds. Some people love it. Some people hate it. When the Supra came out, it didn't look like the FT1. I was right. People were going to love it overall, but people loved it. People hated it.
You know, again, I think the internet and social media. The great thing about social media is that everyone can have their opinion. The
Mm-hmm.
shitty thing about social media is that everyone can have their opinion. So, you know, I would say that the reception for cars like the Supra, yeah, I think it seems really positive. But, the guy who hates it will let everyone know that he hates it. But he was never going to buy one anyway.
Right.
So you're just hating for the fact of hating, which, okay, fair enough. I troll the internet sometimes, whatever. But you were never in the market for it anyway.
Right.
Like, why are you talking shit? Like the Civic Type R. Okay, I personally like the new design. I think it's more mature.
Mm-hmm.
It's more refined. All right, it doesn't look like a Japanese toy. like
the previous
what is it,
one, the
the
FK8.
FK8.
Yeah, I always called it a boy racer. It looked a little boy racer for me.
It was very boy racer, and I didn't hate it.
Yeah,
It's
it's great to drive.
Yeah, I hear nothing but good things about it. The automotive press loved that car. You know, the Brits love that car, and the Brits don't like anything Japanese, and if they did, they would pretend to hate it.
Right.
So it's like, it reminds me of every time Clarkson and them on Top Gear would test the NSX Type R, they would do it in the rain.
Yeah, and it's even those old like best motoring videos. You know, they're going around the track, and it's always raining.
Yeah. So, you know, look, the FK8, I thought it was a little boy racer. Aesthetically, not my cup of tea. Would I drive one? Yeah. What I spend? If I was in the market for it, I would strongly consider that car. But you know, you got the new one. What is the FL5? Is that what the?
I don't even know what the code word is for that one yet.
Yeah. So
it's just the new Civic Type R for now.
Yeah, the new Civic Type R. And I look at it, and it, to my eye, is more appealing. And I'm like, okay, people who are shitting on it, they don't even have the old Type R.
Right.
So, you know, like, is the other one better? Well, do you own one of those? No? Okay, well, all right, well, whatever. They're just talking shit. So, look, I love that car. My buddy just went to his local dealership out in Champaign, Illinois, and he just signed the papers for his pre-order. He's got everything on paper, in writing. He's got it in writing that, so the out the door price for that car is contingent upon the MSRP. So Honda hasn't announced MSRP. They haven't really announced anything about that car, but so the paperwork that my friend signed was based on a projected MSRP.
What are they projecting it at? Because I would, and I haven't read shit about the car, but I think the FK8 was like 37. So maybe 38.5 or something.
Yeah, I've read some publications saying that the projected MSRP they projected to be about 40. So I think on paper my buddy had it written down at 45. So if it's higher than that, then he can opt out of the agreement and get his deposit back. And if it's less, even better for him. So, and again, they haven't announced anything regarding that car. I heard something like 325 horsepower.
That's been the buzz lately. And then everybody who hates it is going to turn around and want one too. That's how this world works.
Oh, of course. I mean, like, look, they were shitting on the Supra, and you know, I was looking at the the concept, and then when it came out with the So the Supra, when they came out with the concept, I was like, that looks dope. When they came out with the production car, obviously people were disappointed. They were shitting on the design, and I'm like, okay, it's not as cool. The concepts are exactly that. They're not beholden to aerodynamics, nor are they beholden to like crash safety regulations. So what people don't understand is that crash safety regulations and vehicle impact regulations also impact vehicle design
dramatically.
So that's why I think that we're seeing a homogenization of car designs. Like, a lot of cars just look like each other.
They get fatter.
They're getting fatter. I mean, they're
bigger wheels, fatter. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they're like, for instance, so they're mandating like A pillar, B pillar, and C pillar airbags. So, all right, well, that's just going to make those pillars thicker, which sort of obstructs visibility out of the car, you know? And so all of these things make the car heavier and bigger.
I mean, all you have to do is look at a 1995 Porsche 911 and a 2021 Porsche 911 right next to each other. It's almost like 1.5 times it, the 95 version.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of have to be that big. And then when they come out with a car as small as, I don't know, what is that? What, the Alfa Romeo 4C? Is that the small roadster?
It's a smaller one, but it's still fat. Like if you put it next to your NSX.
Yeah. And, but before, that type of car in the 90s would have been the size of a Miata.
Mm-hmm.
So, and then people were shitting on the new Z. I don't like the front of the new Z. It's too square for me. It almost doesn't fit the rest of the design.
Mm-hmm. But that rectangular opening in the front is kind of weird.
It's almost as if it was an afterthought. But overall, I really like the direction that they're going with that design. It's very retro. I like retro designs. I think Ford nailed it when they decided to go retro with the design of the Mustang, and then I think GM followed with some of their muscle cars. But people are shitting on I was reading some guy, he was shitting on the Z. Why? Because the chassis is the same as the previous Z. It's just sheet metal. Like that's the fight you want to pick with this thing?
Yeah. Heaven forbid they didn't retool the entire thing.
Well, and listen, I can understand it as being a cost-cutting measure. Also, if the chassis was good, like why reinvent the wheel on that?
Right. No pun intended.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, okay, if you take the new Z and let's say you take the final year of the previous generation 370, the Nismo package, if you take the new Z, it would probably kick the crap out of the Nismo Z, the 370Z, on a road course.
Mm-hmm.
So it's tangibly better.
What's interesting is there were a lot of NSX owners and NC1 NSX owners who weren't that impressed with the Type S once it was announced. Okay, new front end, looks like a Lamborghini, new rear end. It's only got a small bump in horsepower. Not worth it. And then they were gone, and now everybody's angry that they didn't get an opportunity to buy it.
Like I said, it's that's just what happens.
Yeah.
And I knew you've driven both. I mean, I'm pretty sure you can attest to the tangible improvements that were made for the Type S.
Yeah, I haven't driven an NC1 hard since they came out in 2017, but just from my recollection and leaning on people like, Chris Wilson drove my car when I first got it. He had it at Science of Speed, and he said it's a noticeable difference in every way, shape, or form.
Right. And I bet. I mean, the thing is, like, if I got a base NC1, it would be way more car than I would ever need.
Yeah, and it's a great car. It's fucking fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love the look of the Type S. It should have looked that way the first time, but I'm not going to get into the lead designer.
The Japanese actually redid it.
The Japanese. Well, that's why it looks better.
Yeah, they sent it that's not even that's dead serious. They sent the car over to Japan and said come up with some better aero, and they sent it back looking like that.
Well, listen, that's what happens when you let a culture who is so hardworking that they'll kill themselves if they do a bad job.
Facts.
Okay?
That is facts.
That's the type of work ethic I want for engineering and designing my cars.
That's the kind of work ethic I want, period. People who, contractors, yard work, we need to adopt that over here in the United States.
Hey, you fucked up over here. Oh, shit, he just threw himself out of the window.
Dave, how could people get a hold of you, man? Where can they find your comedy? Do they just walk in? Or, I mean, that's pretty random, I know right now, it sounds like. But you, like I said, you started the thing earlier. So you guys, did your first one recently, and hopefully you do more.
Yeah, so I'm doing a once-a-month show in... I think it's Hollywood. I can't tell, but it's in Los Angeles. It's in like East Hollywood right now at a comedy club studio called The Third Wheel. Once a month. The show is called Purposefully Offensive. We're speaking the subtext there. It just lets everybody know the type of show you're getting into.
Sure. Disclaimer. It's in the title.
It's right there. Like, don't show up to the show. All right. If you're easily offended, okay, some material may not be suited. Get over it.
Right.
So I do a once a month show there. We're looking to bump that up next year to every 2 weeks. You can follow me on Instagram at the David Hahn, where you can possibly be offended by my posts. I would like to think of myself as a part-time shit poster. You know, what's funny is my in-laws follow me, and sometimes I will post things with them in mind. So
I know you're watching. Watch this.
I know you're going to see this.
I want you to think about this joke next time you're sitting across from me at Thanksgiving, okay?
Oh man, they got early on. They tried to like talk to me about my post. Like, I'm not listening to you. Like, you're taking this way too seriously. Just stop it.
You know, we talked about this before, I think, on the show, but one of the inspirations that I had to just do this, and I still pull punches. I pull a lot of punches on my own podcast. But, you know, he'd said if he worried about what all his guests and other people thought, family, friends, then he would never have gotten anywhere.
Oh, of course. I mean, that he says that on occasion on any one of his like 37 podcasts that he does.
And as a comedian or anybody in entertainment, you just can't worry. Okay, if I say this, my wife's going to kick my ass when I get home.
Yeah, I mean, my wife has sort of had to. I mean, she's always been very supportive and stuff about my comedy and the things that I post, and it's why I have a stage name, so I can at least separate myself in that regard. There's like a buffer between you know, her and my daughter and me and my comedy, but she's generally been very supportive. Although sometimes I'll post something and she'll look at me and I'm like, "You sure?" I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna do this." Where it was like, one time I made a post about something, and my mother-in-law sent me a message. She's like, "David, you know, I can't believe you would post something like this when so many women struggle with it." I didn't even respond.
Because I'm not divorcing your daughter. Okay, you can say what you want. We're not getting divorced.
Well, it's not. Yeah, I mean that, and like, I don't know, because if I feel like if I would have engaged that, first off, Adam Carolla says this. It's sort of this thing that I've lived by my whole life, but he articulated it. I only argue when I'm right. So that's not to say I'm right all the time, but I only argue when I'm right. And so if I'm not fully sure that I'm right, then I'm probably going to shut the fuck up. At the very least, I might just ask a bunch of questions. But I feel like if I would have engaged that, I would have escalated it, because I like to argue. It would have just got to the point where it's like, well, so you don't want me to say these things. Well, that means that I'm just going to say them even harder.
Sure.
You know, and that's just how I've been, even as growing up as a kid, where if you told me that I couldn't do something, then it really just made me want to do it. And there's an element of that within comedians. I'm not going to say all comedians, because I encounter some comedians out there who, you know, they complain about other comedians' material. And when I hear that, in my head, I just say to myself, you know, they're never going to make it in any capacity, because you can't have that mentality. Because there's nothing, if that's the case, there's nothing from stopping someone else saying that about them.
Sure.
I'm not saying like I'm not like some of these accounts who are just straight up just let me see see who I can offend at the highest level every time I post. If I think it's funny, I'm gonna post and say it. So
he is the David Hahn. David, we'll have to do it again.
Yeah, please, let's do this. I really like talking shop. I like talking cars. Just life in general. I've always been sort of intrigued by what you got going on. So I feel like I have a bunch of questions to ask you too. So, all right, Jay, hey man, it's been great.
I want to thank David Hahn for joining the show. Tell me if you guys like that. I think that was fun. I think he'd be a fun correspondent. It's a new show. Got a lot of guests lined up. If you guys follow me on social media, you'll see that I called all of them out. Every single person that I had listed has confirmed they will do the show, but we have not confirmed a time. That is on me. That is not on them. Need to get that figured out. If you like what you heard today, please subscribe to the podcast. Go tell a friend about it. Leave a review on Apple, Spotify, or whoever allows ratings. Show's literally everywhere. If you want to email the show, hardparkingpodcast@gmail.com. Follow me on Instagram at Jhae Pfenning, JhaePfenning. Join the Hard Parking Violations Facebook group. Excited we're over 300 people. That's at facebook.com/hardparkingmedia, and then click groups. Also follow the YouTube. I posted the Monterey Car Week video. I forgot to add music because I edited it on my phone, and I went to upload, and it was like 5 gig. Once I scheduled it, I said, shit, I forgot to add music. So, yeah. But it's all about just getting stuff out there. That's the way YouTube works, apparently. One thing, right Honda and right Toyota, Scottsdale, Arizona, forward online. Sell Shop Wireless Services, Westgate Exotic Cars and Rentals, Patreon business supporters, Kuya Automotive out of Winter Garden, Florida, Pell Construction out of Caledonia, Michigan, Big House Small Home Design out of Ashburn, Virginia, and Traverse City, Michigan. It's beaghouse.com, BEAGHAUS.com. New sponsor. Thanks so much. The rest of you, if you're in a position to help the podcast upgrade, join the Patreon for as little as $3 a month. Get access to bonus audio as well as show swag. When I have it, I don't always have it, but when I do, you get it. Special thanks to Mark Stoneman, Catherine Cox, Eddie Ramos, Richard Graves, Byron Jones, Bo Jung, Alex Gamina, and Drew Bunkley. Alex was a little hurt listening to the show last time when we went over Monterey Car Week. It was not in your destiny to go this year. It just wasn't. But remember, I can't grow like Tell the World how good the show is. Let's do this. Let's grow this thing together. And I'll talk to you all next week. NS Expo is around the corner. I am excited.
Shut up!
Now it's stripping time.